Hey friends, and welcome to the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey podcast. I'm your host, Jamie, and I'm so glad you're here. Each week on this show, I invite a girlfriend to join me and we chat about the big things in life, the little things in life, and everything in between. Calling all Texas moms. Urgent Care for Kids is a pediatric specialized urgent care with 10 locations across the greater Austin, Houston, and Dallas-Fort Worth areas, as well as home telemedicine for kids. Now you can access quality pediatric specialized care on your iPhone or computer within minutes. Urgent Care for Kids truly has the child and their family at the forefront. And just in time for summer camp and Little League, they are offering my listeners a $20 discount on sports physicals in any Urgent Care for Kids location when you mention the happy hour or use the discount code UCK20OFF. That's all one word. Visit urgentcarekids.com to learn more or contact a location near you. Friends, you are listening to episode number 194, and today my guest is Ruth Simons. I fell in love with her during this interview. I'm not kidding, fell in love with her. We jumped right into this interview with her sharing some things she's never shared on any interview before. You know I love some exclusive information, you guys. I'm certain that you know who Ruth is because she's everywhere on Instagram. Her newest book, Garden of Truth, just released this past April. And last September, her first book, Grace Laced, Discovering Timeless Truths Through Seasons of the Heart, also released. Ruth is an artist, an author, entrepreneur, and a speaker. She's most interested in how the gospel intersects her daily life and longs to see beauty and truth together in any creative medium. You're going to hear that come from her heart today. She's an unlikely mom to 6 young boys and wife to Troy, with whom she leads Grace Laced's small but mighty team. On today's show, I told you already, she starts out telling me some things she said she's never declared on a podcast before. We discussed Chinese culture, our identity in Christ, how her family became believers, what life is really like with 6 boys, and some of the struggles of running a business that is also a ministry. We talk about boundaries for Instagram and the lenses that she uses to think through every photo that she posts on Instagram. You guys, it's been 2.5 weeks since our last Happy Hour Live, and we are already planning our next one. And of course, it's going to be amazing. I cannot wait to tell you who the guests that are coming in. We're doing it just the same as we always do. There'll be a show on Friday night and a show on Saturday night. Are you ready for the dates? Are you ready for the dates? October 5th and 6th. Make sure that you are subscribed to the newsletter so that you will know when tickets are going to go on sale. Go to jamieivey.com/newsletter, and we're going to announce it there first when the tickets are going to go up. Tickets are going to go fast for this one, you guys. There are not as many seats as we've had before. So mark your calendar, subscribe to the newsletter, talk to your girlfriends, and get the trip on the calendar. You guys, when Ruth and I started talking, the mics were on, and we just jumped in. In fact, I never even said, Ruth, welcome to the happy hour. I just said, how do you pronounce your name? And then we went into our whole story. You're going to love it. So you're going to get all of our conversations. It's fun and encouraging and uplifting and challenging. Such a fun hour for you that you're going to walk away feeling super challenged and encouraged as well. So let me do what I didn't get to do. Ruth, welcome to the happy hour. Okay, say your full name.
I can't believe we're finally doing this. And it's Ruth Chou Simons. Nobody would ever know that because CHOU is chou, which means cabbage in French, or chow. But you know, it's
I thought it was chow, and I apologize.
But that's because everybody says wonton, and it's not really wonton.
What is it?
It's winpun.
Wonton?
But no, who would know that?
I wouldn't know
It's just that I am a purist because I speak Chinese, so I can't bring myself to say Ruth Chou Simons when it's pronounced Joe.
Joe.
Yeah, so my Chinese name is Zhou Yiro, and so I can't do it. So
wait, where's Ruth come in?
When my family came to the United States.
Are you going to tell me that they gave you an American name?
No, a guy who collected immigrants and strays gave me the name Ruth.
You need to expand on that. A guy who collected immigrants and strays.
I know, right? So my parents came to the United States because my grandparents, they were going to come here and do school and study and do kind of the American dream. Some things didn't quite work out, and they ended up not living with my grandparents, not beginning a new life with family, and had no money, no English, nothing. And so there was a man who collected a lot of folks. One, I was a child. I don't even remember if the story is totally true.
How old were you?
3.5, 4. But it was a little period of time in my life. And I just remember, we shared a home with somebody who said he swam in the ocean. I mean, is that really possible? Come on.
Where? What city are we talking about?
Oh, this is in Maryland, D.C.
So your parents immigrated over
Yes.
and came into New York City?
Girl, I actually don't really know.
You
the
were 3.5.
exact- I really don't. I've never asked that question. I should find out the details
And he
of this.
said, your name is going to be Ruth.
He actually
stuck.
Yes. Okay. And so let me just tell
went
you.
to school and
Because when you come over, they translate your name and it was spelled something crazy like Roujoy. It's like all these weird letters put together and nobody can pronounce it. And so he named my parents, Thomas and Julia, and me, Ruth. And let me just tell you.
Your parents still go by Thomas and Julia?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Isn't that crazy? And so, but then here's the thing. In kindergarten, do you remember back when we were kids and there was that cartoon, Gem? Oh, come on.
Wait, G-E-M? Yeah.
Pink
She had
hair,
like, yeah.
pink hair.
Uh-huh.
So I was so obsessed with that stuff that I was like, why isn't my name Gem or Jade or Jalila? Like I was always thinking of anything but Ruth. Because even now, even with vintage names coming back, Ruth is not one of them.
It's a beautiful name.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Well, now that I'm a Christian, it's really beautiful.
Right.
But at the time I was like, are you kidding
Like I got
me?
a lame name.
Yeah, for real.
It's like I wanted to name my daughter Esther, which is beautiful. And I love this. I love Esther and the Bible and all these things. But it is an older name. And so it could have gone one of two ways. It could have been
really
like,
could.
that's awesome, or eh.
So a story I'm going to tell tomorrow from the main stage.
Okay.
I'm going to tell it real quick. But when Troy and I first got married 20 years this summer, we're out on our honeymoon and he says, babe, what would you name our daughters? And as I was like thinking about it, he says, because I think I love Rachel, Elizabeth, and Sarah. And it doesn't sound like any big deal, but I married a very white man. And I was like, and I started bawling. This is our first, been married 6 hours or something like that. And I was,
Oh, honey, like,
on our honeymoon,
Uh-huh.
I get really dramatic
Yeah.
and I'm like, you don't even know that I'm Chinese. Like you didn't mention Jade or like anything. Like what, I don't know if I was expecting him to say Jade or Jasmine or I don't know,
anything.
but it was just an interesting thing because I think maybe it's a little suppressed, but I think all my life I was kind of like, Ruth doesn't really reflect, it wasn't a choice made by our family. We weren't even Christians then. And so it's just really,
your parents didn't even name you Ruth.
no. Mm-mm. Isn't that interesting?
It's so interesting.
I don't really know if I would totally admit this, but when I watched Joy Club for the first time, I had a little bit of like,
Wait, what movie?
remember back in the Amy Tan's book, Joy Club?
Oh, Joy. I never saw this.
No. I don't have that kind of drama, but you kind of get it. That immigrants and like second generation Chinese family issues, there's a lot of stuff there.
Okay.
So yeah.
I have learned so much in the first 5 minutes of our conversation.
I know. Well, I don't get to talk about these things very much.
So when people introduce you, do they butcher your name all the time?
All the time. So it's so funny because if a podcast
And you go
doesn't-
by all three.
Not always. The only reason why I go by Ruth Chou Simons on print
Uh-huh.
is because Ruth Simons is a sex therapist in Europe.
Really?
And so I couldn't get ruthsimons.com.
because
and-
there's somebody already making
And I just
people's
didn't,
lives happy.
yeah. And I just really didn't want anybody to be like searching, help me, Ruth Simons. And
And come up with some
Mhm.
different
So-
kind of help.
so I was just like, and also Ruth Simons sounds a little Mennonite, right?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of like maybe somebody who would name their daughter Rachel, Elizabeth, or Sarah.
So you don't really go by all three names in your personal life.
I don't use
Ruth
no,
Simons.
no, not at all.
Yeah.
But it just finally when it went into print, I was like, there's nothing besides my face that looks and speaks of my heritage and the fact that I was born in Taiwan and that I still speak Mandarin and and so that's why I stuck it in there. But it's funny because everywhere on the internet you'll basically see it spelled wrong and pronounced wrong. Most of the time people say Ruth Chou Simmons because we don't learn phonograms anymore in America.
Oh, yeah. It's Simons.
It's Simons.
Well, you know what?
Short vowel.
I'm gonna get it right.
You got it. Good job.
Okay. Well, I'm so glad that you're here.
It's so fun. We're finally sitting down
We're in a
together. and
hotel room.
I
in
love that we're
Dallas.
together.
I know,
Yes.
at the Sparrow Conference.
So fun.
And you're teaching tomorrow.
I am. And
Does that make you nervous?
oh, girl, I'm so glad you're asking. Nobody realizes how nervous I get.
Okay.
I really had to repeat to myself, like, just because you're scared. I mean, our friend Jessica Honegger says, do it scared, right?
uh-huh.
But the reality is like, I'm not just like a little scared. I sweat buckets. Like my shoes will be, and I will be standing in a puddle. And I wish
Because you're nervous or because you're a sweater?
Oh, I'm not a sweater.
Okay.
Chinese people also don't really sweat, by the way.
Chinese people don't sweat.
Oh gosh, if you have listeners who are like protesting this, no, I've never worn deodorant.
What?
I've never worn deodorant a day in my life.
This is a lie.
Yeah, and I also don't shave my legs.
Ever?
No. Mm-mm. So you can touch them, feel them.
I am touching your legs.
Listen, but if the wind blows, you'll see them blowing in the wind a little.
But you have hardly any hair.
Yeah, it's because I've never shaved.
You've never shaved your legs.
Now, in the 80s, I did epilady. Do you remember what that is?
Is it the cream?
No, epilady is the weird hair yanker outer.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, it was only really like as seen on TV for about like 60 seconds.
Do you have hair under your arms?
I do. I shave my armpits,
Okay.
Of course.
Okay. But you don't wear
I can't believe
deodorant.
I'm telling you all this stuff. No, I don't because
Do
I
you
really
use essential
don't.
oils?
I do, but not for that.
Not under your armpits. Okay.
Yeah. So I really just don't. I mean, next time when I'm speaking and you guys give me hugs, then lean in. And everybody's going to start leaning in now to see if I smell. But, no, I don't use deodorant. And
Anything else you got for me about that it would be quote unquote maybe odd? I'm not calling you odd, Ruth. I'm just saying I wish I had
Right?
this life of not shaving my I
It
can
is
shave my
funny.
legs and get a shiver and then I've got
that is so funny.
black
Well,
hair.
yeah, I literally just said, why would I do that to myself? Because it was like 5 hairs to begin with. So if I started shaving them, they would be 50,000. So
Right.
why start? So I do have to live with the fact that if somebody got close, they would see.
Yeah, but I'm telling you, I am less than 3 feet away and your legs look smooth as a baby's butt. I mean, that's the life.
Literally, I've never said any of these things on any interview ever. So this is kind of
That's
fun.
what happens at the happy hour. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm glad you talked this about culture.
Yeah.
You born in Taiwan.
Yep.
Your husband born in
Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Albuquerque, New Mexico. Opposites attract, I guess, other sides of the world. How do you bring your culture into your family?
Well, when my oldest, who's now 16, when he was a baby, I had visions of being like, you will be bilingual. Like I
Like
would
you're going to speak only
oh
Mandarin
my goodness.
to him.
I did because that's what like a good Chinese family would do would be make sure your kid knows both languages.
For sure.
And I tried for a little bit, but you really can't do shepherding a child's heart. Just kidding. I just had to throw that in there. But you kind of can't like do the whole like disciplining and working with your kid. And I wasn't overachieving like first time mom. So of course I was like, we're not having the 30-minute conversation. And I was stressing out about that and not being able to do that fully in Chinese. And Troy couldn't understand a word I was saying. So he'd be like,
What did you just tell our son?
So ultimately, I tried, but I wasn't at the time we weren't living with the Chinese community. I didn't have other people in my life who could like support that. My parents were not even in the country at the time. They were in Canada. And so I didn't have support around. And so we didn't, but I will say one of the things that's most fascinating to me is how much Chinese culture can feel legalistic on its own as a culture.
What do you mean by that?
As in like it's very performance driven.
Yes.
Very perfection driven, very don't screw up at all because you're a good daughter if you do things the right way driven. So I tell my story to my boys a lot about this because it actually stood in the way of me really understanding grace and understanding what my identity in Christ is about because I spent so much time thinking that I was the best daughter, the best student, the best everything if I could just do it the right way. So it comes into play when I speak about some of those things and when it rears its ugly head in me and I'm kind of like, yeah, there's parts of me that gets a little like tiger momish, like, what? Your AP test is next week, right? There's that part that comes out. And then I have to stop and say, okay, wait, hold on. Let's remember that we're not citizens I'm not a citizen of Taiwan or Chinese culture. I'm not even a citizen of pop American culture. We are citizens of the kingdom of God. And let's start over about what our identity is in Christ and who we're really trying to look like. Because I can get all the approval in the world of Chinese culture, and that still wouldn't be my identity in Christ.
No. Are your parents believers?
They are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me quickly, because I'm just so curious about immigrating, living with this family that gave you the name Ruth, and then where did Jesus come into the picture?
Years later. My mom spoke the name of Christ in our home on and off when we were really little because she had heard bits and pieces of the gospel when she was a kid. But this is a really neat story. But my parents then moved to New Mexico because I had an uncle who was a scientist in Los Alamos. Long story short, a lady named Glenna invited my mom to Bible study fellowship, which lots of people know about. And she essentially led my mom to Christ, to this, discipled her, studied scripture. My mom in turn grew to love Jesus. My dad didn't become a Christian until I was in 8th grade. And that's a whole other story. But my mom started teaching us about Christ. And the craziest part of the story is I get an email, and this was 6 months ago, from Glenna. She emailed and said, she emailed my assistant. My assistant forwarded it to me, and she says, I just received your book from my friend who is connected to why we're in Durango now. But long story short, she says, is this the same Ruth that was in Albuquerque who I took her mom, Julia, to Bible study fellowship? And there was this whole story of our connections over the years. And so I called her. This was a few months ago. I called her. I'm 42. It's been decades. And I don't even remember. I couldn't pick out her face. And I said, Glenna, I just want you to know that what you're holding in your hand, this book you have, and the words that came out of Grace Laced is a result of you taking the time to just love on one immigrant woman who barely knew English. You just took the time to say, you don't make a super easy friend. You barely talk to me in English, but I'm going to take you every week to BSF. And I'm going to show you the glories of Christ in the scriptures. And I said, Glenna, I know you're not going to take the credit for it, nor am I saying you should, but I'm just telling you, Jesus used you, and our family still loves the Lord because you decided to invest in one woman.
Golly.
Isn't that amazing? I mean,
that's amazing. That's encouraging for everyone listening because relationships are hard. And I can imagine even how you worded it, of a woman who hardly spoke any English and didn't really talk to me that much. And
because what do we do? We go to Bible studies and we find a girl who looks exactly like us. And we're like, ooh, she'd be fun to have coffee date with. And I'm not saying, my mom's a lovely woman, but I'm just saying at the time,
for sure,
she came with a young child. She had a husband who, was having a hard time with his job and who had gotten in a massive car accident. That's a whole other story. But yeah, there were all these dramatic things going on. And my mom has a pretty brutal, dysfunctional past in her life. And so there was a lot of counseling and a lot of it wasn't just like a pretty, tidy story. This was like immigrant woman with a whole lot of baggage. Yeah.
And it changed your whole family.
And I got to say to her, I'm so glad your friend got you this book. I didn't even know where you were or anything. I had no connection with you anymore. But this is so amazing that you emailed my assistant. And so I just got on the phone with her. And
you made her day, I bet.
And we had a conversation. We both cried a little on the phone and just said, we're looking for a time to hopefully meet each other and stuff. But
okay, so you mentioned that you guys just moved to Colorado.
Yeah.
You've been in New Mexico your whole life, it sounds like. Most of it.
On and off, but this last time, 17 years.
Okay, yeah.
So
started your family there?
My parents are in Colorado, but not where we are.
But you started your family in New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so what took you to Colorado?
We were just in a really closing of one chapter and a beginning of another. New Mexico was where Troy was a pastor. We had church planted. We founded a school there. There were lots of special and dear communities, ministries, things that we poured our lives into. And those things came to a close. And it was just really obvious to us that we had an opportunity now that we were some doors were closed and some doors were open. And we were just kind of in a place where we said, where do we want to invest the next season of our lives? And I think all along there was always a sense of like, you always want to go where there's a lot of hubbub, but then what about smaller towns and places where maybe there's not really solid teaching, there's not a lot of discipleship, maybe they don't have a lot of resources. And so we ended up finding a town that we've loved for some time just because of the nature and the scenery. And it's actually near Albuquerque because half my staff is still in Albuquerque. Okay. So we travel back and forth quite a bit, but we're grateful to be plugged into a church and have a new beginning in Colorado.
And fixing up your home.
Yes, we did move into a crazy fixer-upper.
Yes. Which is fun and difficult and awful at the same time.
It's like, how does your marriage survive?
Right.
Like, that's really what I want to ask.
Well, when you get on the other side, you'd be like, we have made it.
I know.
Okay, so you also have 6 boys.
Yes.
People, I told people the other day over on the Instagram, that I was going to be talking to you. All the questions were about 3 different things. I'm sure you get the same thing. Okay.
I think so.
Yeah. About your boys, about your marriage, and about running a business.
Okay.
I'm sure you're like, this is my life.
Yeah.
So let's start with your boys. Everyone wants to know, do they ever fight? Do they ever do anything wrong?
Mm-hmm.
In all seriousness, I'm someone, and I always say what you see on Instagram is, if you see my Instagram, you don't see my daughter throwing a fit in her bedroom, right?
Sure.
But I really look at your family and think, man, I would really love to be just a fly on the wall and listen to those devotions that your husband does at the table with the boys and homeschooling and doing projects together. What is life like with raising 6 boys at your house?
So let me back up and say, first of all, that I did create the hashtag motherhood is sanctifying many years ago. And the very first post that ever had that hashtag, I Instagrammed a little bit differently back then because I don't think I was quite aware of how I would feel about so many people having eyes on it. But at that time, I took a photo of my then 2-year-old screaming on the ground. So that's where it started. So it started with a real life picture of a tantrum on the ground. And that's where the motherhood is sanctifying hashtag came about. That was years ago. So now there's like thousands and thousands, and you probably won't ever find that post. I changed the way I did it over time because I have 6 boys, and I can't. You can also be unfairly only representing your motherhood by the bad moments too. So I'm just really cautious to make sure that everything I say doesn't appear necessarily that everything's perfect. I try not to, but that ultimately there's hope. And so for me, no, you don't get to see when I lose my temper that no socks match in their home, or that some brother is upset that he always, takes something from him. So yes, there are fights, but I will also say that, early on when I was a boy mom, people would say, oh, I'm sure your house is full of, and they would name your classic like boy things, like really rowdy, really gross, really like insensitive boy things. And to be frank, we're really not that way. And I don't think you have to raise boys who are just constantly like scratching themselves or sniffing their armpits or being completely gross or weird or making sound effects. No, they make sound effects. They do all those things in terms of like being boy and fun and into dirt. But I also think we are a very conversational family. And so we do work things out by talking. Nobody really is allowed to storm out of the room, slam a door, and punch their fist into the wall. So it's not really an aggressive home in that sense. But that's because the flavor of our home is really defined a lot by the only man they see, which is Troy. And Troy's very much a Renaissance guy. He's all guy. Like, he loves to shoot guns and like skin deer, all the like,
let's go kill
like,
something.
Like talking skeet, like he's into that. But he's very much like, okay, let's sit down and consider, all these things. And he talks to the boys, and he really is like that. And I mean, I just finally had to say, I'm not going to apologize for that, because honestly, I did stop posting some of that, the family devotional stuff, because I wanted to be careful not to be a discouragement to anyone if they felt like,
we're
there
not
was
doing
only
that,
one way.
Yeah.
But the whole reason why I started posting it was ultimately to show that you can do it when your dishes are dirty on your table, when you don't know what to say. You just start with a question. You start by just reading a verse and say, I needed to read this verse today because all of us know how to say that statement. You don't have to read systematic theology books. You don't have to do anything but to start by simply saying, this meant something to me.
Yeah. That's an encouragement to moms, because I by no means think that everything is perfect at your house. Yeah. But I think when I see it is that you do a really good job of pointing to teaching moments. That's what I see so much, what you put online. It's very teaching, which is why you shouldn't be nervous about speaking tomorrow, because you teach in every post that you write. Everything is teaching driven. I appreciate that. You guys, I know that you're loving this show. I know that you are probably going to have to listen again to write down some notes, but I want to take a quick minute to thank our sponsors for the show, because they make the happy hour possible. First, I'd like to thank SAS Footwear. Are you frustrated that the shoes in your closet make your feet hurt all day? At SAS Footwear, they understand how difficult it is to find stylish shoes that are comfortable. That's why, my friends, for over 40 years, they've been making, fitting, and selling footwear that will not let your feet in the day before you are ready. Plus, if you've ever had trouble fitting into that cute pair, SAS has fashionable designs and a range of sizes and widths to fit any foot. So right now, you can go online to sasfootwear.com. That's www.sasfootwear.com. Enter the code Happy Hour at checkout for free shipping on your first order. Or check out their helpful store locator and pop into any of the hundreds of SAS locations across the country. Tell them the Happy Hour with Jamie Ivey sent you and get $10 off your first purchase. Follow SAS Shoemakers on Instagram to see the newest styles from SAS, where style feels good. Okay, if I gave you the task to walk into a store and pick out a wine that you love, but the catch is it has to be one you haven't had before, where would you even start? That's why we want to introduce to you Winc. W-I-N-C. Winc makes it easy to discover great wines by shipping wines that are personalized for you right to your door. It's the best day of your month because they're all starting at just $13 a bottle. You're going to go online and you're going to answer a few simple questions for Winc's palate profile quiz, like how do you take your coffee and how do you feel about blueberries? Then Winc is going to send you wines curated to your taste. The more wines that you rate, the more personalized your monthly selections will be. Each month, there are new delicious wines like the insanely popular Summer Water Rosé. Also, some of the best parts about this are there's no membership fees. You can skip any month and cancel anytime. Shipping is covered, and if you don't like a bottle, they're going to replace it with one that you love. Discover great wine today. Go to trywinc.com/happy hour, and you're going to get $20 off your first shipment. That's trywinc, TRYWINC.com/happy hour for $20 off. Trywinc.com/happy hour. Okay, here is the rest of my conversation with Ruth. Okay, people have to understand this too. 97.5 thousand Instagram followers. I'm not saying it's a business for you, but you see it as a ministry, don't you?
I totally do. Yep. And what's hard though is that my family does live off of the products we sell, but the only way I will continue to sell the product is if the thing that drives the heart behind it is actually the ministry of it. So I can't speak about the product. Like I can't just be like, I paint things
because personally you don't feel like you can, or
it's not motivating enough.
Okay.
I mean, I will be bored. I will be bored and not interested and move on to something else if it's all about, please just buy this thing.
But so you're like, here's the message.
So if you see the way I do social media, it will always be the last thing I talk about. Like, if you want to buy this, go for it.
Yeah.
And I just have to trust the Lord with it. And I have for the last several years. The business has been around almost 5 years. And, like the Lord brings sales, and that's fine because our family lives off of it now. And I'm really grateful. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's like, there's a reason why I started painting it and reading the truth and wanting to make it beautiful in the first place. And it was because I needed to see the gospel intersect my daily life in some tangible way, in a way that reminded me, like, keep your eyes on what's beautiful about the gospel. And so,
which is what you're doing for us.
And so when you show us the
gospel intercepting your life, it's a reminder for us as well. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about business.
Yeah. And I'm one of those that I don't feel guilty about making money. So it's not that at all. I feel
We're
like
high-fiving.
I mean, I am all about, I love business strategy. If I had the time, I'd probably do coaching calls because I love branding.
Well, how about I just come to Colorado and
Girl,
we do a big little...
Let's do it. Let's do
double
it.
mastermind.
Do you know how much I am like all about strategy and being, because here's the thing. The ultimate thing is it's not strategy, it's stewardship. It's just stewardship. Even selling books, it's not about lists. It's about have this one opportunity.
You're
just
get
steward it.
Look, I'm getting like all like, here we go.
Okay,
all right.
Give me your look.
Do you know, when I first started this show, I felt guilty when I started adding ads. And I got over that.
Really?
My friend Jessica Coniger, mutual friend, has been so good for me. And I've said that so many times. But because I thought, well, it's ministry. But then I'm like, well, I actually put a lot of work into this.
Absolutely.
It's my job.
Absolutely.
And, there have been times when like churches have been like, hey, do you want to come speak? Like, come up here. We'll give you $100. Well, like I have to leave my family.
Absolutely.
I have to prep.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So now why do you think women struggle with this? Because I don't think men do. When's the last time you ever heard a man that's like, I don't know if I should make money for this?
Yeah, I've never heard that. I have never heard that.
But why do we? And I think that it's good that we can have this conversation because some woman is sitting at home and she has something in her and she wants to do it and she's scared. And this could be one of the reasons because she's like, I don't know if I should do this or not. And sometimes it's that.
Well, the bottom line is, I think, is because men don't look around to other men for their approval. Women do. We dress for other women to look at us. We don't really. Like, I mean, that's so the bottom line, right? So at the end of the day, when you say that this piece of art is worth this much money, you are immediately saying,
What do you think?
What do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think I'm crazy?
Yes.
What if you don't think it's worth that much? Then what do you think about me thinking that it's worth that much? So we analyze
like,
everything.
are they going to think I'm too much of myself? Or
Right. So it all boils down to really whether or not we are enslaved to somebody else's opinion, even of our own opinion of ourselves, right? It's just this terrible cycle. So I think it's bad business. I mean, it's not smart business because the Lord's given us a brain to use, strategy.
Yes.
And at the end of the day, I inadvertently give, social media or branding advice regularly whenever I get a chance to, because I would love to share whatever I know, which is not that much, but I will say at the end of the day, we keep talking branding. We talk about building platforms, all these things. But at the end of the day, really, if you just take your eyes off of how to make me better and you're just a little more generous about how to make it so that somebody's pausing for 5 seconds on your social media might get a glimpse of something more eternal, that's generous. Generous marketing is good marketing, And so at the end of the day, this is nothing brilliant. I'm just simply saying, like, we can get over it if we just stop thinking about ourselves so much, because the most unhappy I am is always when I'm constantly like, well, what does that say about me? What is that? What are they going to think about me? Yeah. What is that group going to think about me if I say this? And what is, blah, 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 there's just so many versions of that.
Yeah.
And so it's really freeing for me because in my line of work, it can be very self-absorbed, right? Because it's my painting. It's photos of my family, my life, my words. And so
how do you keep away from that?
Well, I just have rules for myself.
Tell them some.
And they don't have to be everybody's rules. I have to just say that up front. Like God's called each one of us to tell a different story. And it is totally legitimate if somebody out there is doing a platform fully on teaching people how to do hair and makeup. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Uh-huh. But for me, I knew that I needed to kind of stay really specific on a few things because I am easily distracted. And because I am really prone to being concerned about all these other things. Thinking. And so for me, I have these filters for myself. Like, I wish they were like perfectly written out so I could read it to you. But my rules are basically like, at the end of the day, it has to not point to me. Like that's like just the biggest rule for me is that because it's my product, my words, my message,
the center of it.
Because I'm the center of it, the filter is always like, does it ultimately make much of me
or much
of God? And ultimately, it doesn't mean that everything has to be spiritual because sometimes I write things that don't necessarily have great deep theology in it, but it needs to take the attention off of me being the savior because I can't be anybody's savior. So
do you like attention?
It's funny because I feel like in general I'm comfortable with it, but when I think about tomorrow getting on stage, you're
starting to sweat. You need some deodorant.
It freaks me out. Yeah, and I totally need deodorant.
Okay, so you're not the center. What else?
So I think ultimately, this is a funny way to say it, but I want people to feel like they benefited for pausing because scrolling in social media is mindless. It's numbing, and for most people, it's a drug. Yeah. For most people, it's just to kind of get out of their empty life. And nobody admits it, but we're all scrolling in search of something. And so if you pause for 5 seconds, so that's where the strategy comes in. It
has to be worth it, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. You could call it strategy. Some people might give the same advice to say, how do you get more retention or likes or whatever? I simply like to say, how do I make my presence count at all for the glory of his name? Like if you're going to, if a photo, and this is why I take good photos, right? Or I try to take good photos because you stop.
What do you take them on?
My phone.
Oh, I love it.
It's all on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Keep talking.
So I really feel like you can use everything to adorn the gospel. There's not one thing you can't. There's not one thing you can't use to bring attention to the glory of God and to adorn the gospel and give people a waft of the fragrance of who Jesus is and how beautiful he is. And so why would I want to take a bad picture? And bad picture doesn't mean you can take a good picture of your dirty laundry, right?
No, I know what you mean. Yeah.
So I'm just saying, for me, it is an art. It is an art. Even if I posted a few days ago, I literally moved nothing and I took a picture of my messy house. No, it's not messiest it's ever been. I didn't take a picture of dirty underwear on the ground or whatever, But I feel like I still choose to make sure that that lens causes somebody to think,
Pause and think.
and pause.
Uh-huh.
And if you pause, you don't end up walking away simply knowing more about me. But I hope you pause and you walk away having something to chew on for your own life, because I could be gone tomorrow.
Yeah.
The Lord could take me away tomorrow.
Yeah.
And I can't, I'm not the answer, right? So at the end of the day, I'm just here. I mean, such a Christian-y, cheesy thing to say, but I'm just the vessel, right? I mean, really, at the end of the day, Instagram is a vessel. Grace Lace Instagram is just a vessel.
Yep.
It could be here today, gone tomorrow.
Can I read you a post that made me pause?
Yeah.
This is you. He instructed the boys today in the midst of a dramatic multi-brother meltdown. One fruit of maturity is that you stay the same person regardless of what the circumstance or who may be watching. Who you really are is who you choose to remain. This is what your husband was saying to your boys. And then you said this, maybe more so today in our social media crazed world than ever before, we are quick to flash fruit in the form of posts, graphics, photos, or strategic marketing, but struggle to actually live it out consistently when no one is watching, liking, applauding, or rewarding. We are so top heavy with visible blooms and fruit, yet so careless where it matters most, in the underground roots of the unseen. You said, so I'm preaching to my own heart. In my marriage, my tone, attitude, and body language at home reveal whether I think I'm married to my expectations or who God has given me. As a mom, the most meaningful moments may never be remembered on the internet, and that's okay. In my work, if I want to own my business rather than have my business own me, I have to stop chasing appearance and let my work be a reflection of something greater than my hustle. I mean, that's what we were just talking about, you know, of what is, you can have all of these things up here that look so wonderful, but what actually happens when no one's looking?
And I think more than just simply being like, this is the conversation about hypocrisy. It's more of conversation of, isn't it an overflow? Because I think if we just talk hypocrisy, then the first thing that goes in my mind is like, I'm such a hypocrite. I'm not perfectly consistent. And the emphasis, once again, is back on shame and guilt and like, I don't do it right.
And that perfection that you struggle
exactly.
with. Yeah.
And then where's the attention? The attention is constantly like, God must be disappointed in me because I haven't done it as well as I could. Or really, come on, somebody who's teaching the Bible should really be spending at least 4.5 hours a day on studying scripture, right? The focus is on that. But if we focus on, okay, I have one life and the majority of my life is lived off of the internet. So what am I doing to steward that well? Because whatever I do there will ultimately overflow in the thing I call career, in the thing I call social media, whatever it is that ends up putting the highlight reel out there, that kind of will naturally happen. And I think we spend a lot of time strategizing that
and not
strategizing our real life. Because if you strategize your real life, I mean, at least, I mean, not that I'm that old, but at my age, I actually really feel it now. I really feel it because I say, wow, there is not one thing I can produce on the internet, in my business, or in relationships, anything, not one thing I can produce and maintain if it's not really going on in the roots of my life. I can't maintain it. You could be a flash in the sky and everybody could be like, whoa, she's so amazing. Or look at what she did. Or you could even perfect a speech. I could probably have that speech I'm giving tomorrow done really, really well. So everybody's like, she's the most amazing speaker. But instead, tomorrow morning, that talk may or may not come out like I'm the most dynamic speaker, but I know I worked it out in my heart for weeks and weeks, and I'm just going to trust the Lord with that. And that is more important. Now, everything in me wants to say, I
want a perfect speech.
Oh, I want to get out there and these women who like drop the mic and they're just like, yeah, I mean, really, sometimes I'm like, how do they do it? Because honestly, I still need a script. I cannot not have words in front of me.
Girl, I there's not many people that can do that without words. That's a side note, but
wow. Overachievers unite. You know, you kind of.
I take paper.
I have to take words.
Yeah, me too. Me too. But I really love that conversation. I think it's important to have, and I think it's important because it's just this reminder. Nothing that we said just now, anyone's going to go, "Oh my gosh, I've never thought about that," or "Oh my gosh, I've never felt this," or "This is not new information." You know, we know this stuff. It's just a really good reminder. It's a reminder for my soul and for everyone that's listening. Okay, so let's talk about marriage. You've been married 20 years.
This summer. Yep.
That's awesome.
I never thought we would make it. I am not kidding you. True story. So I have my version of the book that you just wrote, which I love.
Thank you.
Love, love, love. That's one of the books that I've just read.
Thank you.
But I came in with a lot of baggage. Both of us did. But I came in with enough baggage that I literally said the words our first year, I'm not cut out for faithfulness to one. I'm not cut out for this. I'm not cut out because I wanted too much attention.
And you were a believer.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, that's just a lot. So 19 years later, what did that look like? How did that play out? How did you get where you thought, okay, maybe I am cut out from Whitney one, or maybe you're like, well, I don't feel cut out, but I'm going to fight it for the rest of my life. What does that look like for you?
So for one thing, I will say it's a lot like our walk with the Lord in that you persevere by persevering. And you don't get to a day where you're just like, oh my goodness, I am good at this.
We're the best.
Yeah, we've nailed it. And you know what? We finally figured it out. Nope, I don't think we're there at all. In fact, last week we had a big row with one another that broke my heart, and I kind of was unforgiving for a while, you know? And so it's not that, but I do think it's a choice every day. But, you know, it's interesting because if you ask Troy, he'll say, well, Ruth's painfully brought out a lot of things that I really needed to learn about myself. And I say, wow, Troy really kind of like drew out the ugliest in me. And so the reality is, I think we've grown the most in marriage as we've become most aware of our sin. And so I think you can have a shallow marriage that you end up doing fun things together. You get along just fine. But a thriving marriage is probably a marriage that's gone beyond the painful stuff. I mean, beyond just the surface stuff and gone into the painful areas where most of us don't want to deal with. We don't really want to. I mean, let's be honest. On my honeymoon, I closed the door when I went to the bathroom. I did not want to appear to smell or sound bad or seem at all not beautifully perfect. And now 20 years later, he knows a lot more junk than what I smell like, you know, or what I look like when I don't have my makeup on. When Sinners Say I Do, it's a great book. Yeah. Dave Harvey. I haven't read it in a few years, but I know that early on Troy was a pastor in his 30s. And so we did quite a bit of premarital counseling, even while we worked through a lot of that ourselves. Not the worst of it, but, you know, we worked through being young parents, being in ministry, and that was a really encouraging book for us as well.
So, I mean, I'm just so intrigued. Where was this? And you say it's been a life. I mean, it's been 20 years. I mean, you're still working things out. Obviously, we all are. But it's night and day from you saying, I don't think we're going to make this. You wouldn't say that now. What did the switch?
Okay, well, one thing I think I have to mention is, you know, I have a new little book, a tiny little book that came out called Guard of Truth. And the premise of that and where the heart of that came from was that I really had to learn over the years to preach truth to myself. And when Troy said those words to me, I've shared this before, that Troy's the one who said, like, babe, you kind of need to learn to preach the truth to yourself in these moments. That actually happened in the worst of our fights. Like in the worst of me going, I can't do marriage. I am not worthy of love. And I don't think I can love you. Like I literally said those kinds of things. Like I'm never going to get over this. I probably married the wrong person. All these things over and over, or I don't know how to love or whatever. And so I feel like that is a huge part of it, is that we literally, you know, one argument at a time, one situation at a time, stepped back and said, what is this fight really about? It really is about me or you feeling like our worth comes from this, or hoping my spouse will satisfy this, and really getting to the root of that and then saying, what does God say about that? What is the truth about that? So yeah, it's a little bit of a long process, but honestly, I think that's the therapy we implemented in our own marriage, was like, if we say we believe this, if we believe that the gospel transforms us, how does it transform right now? How do we actually apply it right now to the situation? So
I always say that as, you know, telling yourself the gospel, like teach yourself the gospel. And we actually had someone write into us recently, and she said in her email to the happy hour, I hear you say this a lot, like tell yourself the gospel, gospel yourself. I will say that often. And she's like, I don't even know what that means. And so it was a great conversation. My assistant Amanda handled it beautifully, but it just means like, tell yourself what is true, you know, and in certain moments, what is not true is the way you're feeling.
You know, one of my favorite books from, you'll remember this, but Elise Fitzpatrick wrote Because He Loves Me. And that was one of my favorite books that I read. This was, 10 10 years ago or whatever, 15 years ago, it really, really helped me see how the gospel, as simple as it is not that, it's not that simple. Like we need to rethink on it and reconsider what it really means that we've been forgiven. What does it really mean that we're loved, forgiven, redeemed, purchased back? And that matters in our everyday life. And so she's really good.
I love her.
Of course.
Love her. Much. I love her. Okay. You said this to me actually, that you don't have to be blooming to be growing. Tell me what you mean.
That ultimately just comes out of me realizing that so much of, most people know me right now in this very blooming stage of my life. People suddenly know that I'm an artist. They suddenly know that I write books. And I have 6 beautiful boys who happen to all love each other and do the dishes and actually serve one another. And it's not really pretend, like amazingly serve one another. They are kind. But there were major seasons where that was in process and it wasn't here. And so we are living in a time where everybody sees someone else's life in bloom, but you don't see the tilling seasons. You don't see the watering, the sowing, the pulling out the weeds. And so for me, there were years where I had art ability, I had an art degree, and I did not use it. I did not know how to use it. I couldn't use it because I was changing diapers. And there were years where I certainly felt like I did everything I thought I was supposed to do to parent correctly, and it didn't feel like it was fruitful. I wasn't getting anywhere. And so I like to tell young moms, because I feel like after conferences, a lot of times the typical situation is that I might get like a 24-year-old who says, tell me what I could do to be like where you are in a few years. And I say, well, kind of want to live 20 years, and that's a dumb answer maybe, but what I'm really saying is you can't rush it. You can't rush how God grows you. We can imagine that there's a pill for everything, but there isn't. And sanctification is something that happens moment by moment. And so much of it happens where Instagram will never document, where you may not even get to write, your heart might be exploding to want to write it out. No, sometimes it just happens in the nitty gritty where you might even not have words. Sometimes people say, I just don't know how to form words like that. You don't have to. You don't have to be blooming to be growing. And ultimately, maybe that stirring in your heart of a business that you want to start, or a ministry, or some way you want to impact the world, just because you're not doing it right now and flourishing in it and getting attention for doing it doesn't mean that the Lord's not using it or not prepping the very soil that it will bloom and grow in.
Amen. And I think too, like speaking with young moms, I for sure feel like this is a constant thing that I'm talking about, is that all of those things that you're doing, all of those moments that you feel like, golly, I think I have something else in me, or this is really it. Like this is my day in and day out, Groundhog Day life.
Yep.
That those moments actually matter.
And they very much inform exactly what I think we underestimate how much the Lord teaches and gives us words right in the midst of our mundane and the very circumstances that we wish away. Those are the exact circumstances that he actually forms the very thing that someday will form into your message, your words, your heart for other people. But we just want to skip all that and say, I've got a packaged, branded deal now to share with the world. When really, I literally think that everything that people say, oh, I loved your words today that you wrote on Instagram, that didn't happen yesterday. It is not my today's words. They are they've been marinating for a long time. And if you read my blog, it's been around for over 10 years. Some of these words are not new. They just are, I've perfected the way I write them, but they've been in the works for a long time because I've wrestled with all these issues for a long time.
Yeah. You can see God at work in the midst of what might seem mundane.
Yeah, absolutely.
And God, like you said, is just kind of growing something within you.
Yeah.
And I think too, and we can't go here because we don't have time, but I think that it's hard for us in our society and our world to appreciate those moments.
Absolutely.
Because they don't seem as grandiose as what we might feel as
everyday faithfulness is, I wrote a friend last night. I said, even in my ups and downs, the real offering is my response to that. So we think the offering is to the Lord is what am I going to do with my life? How am I going to raise my kids are my offering, or the finished product of what I'm working on? No, the offering is the daily response. That's the offering, is how are you going to respond to the sink full of dishes? How am I going to worship in the everyday? What am I going to do when I don't want to forgive my husband, but I really realize I probably need to work through this? That response is the everyday offering that we give back to the Lord. It's not the thing that comes 20 years from now.
It's we need to appreciate it.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Absolutely.
It's so hard. Okay, Ruth, speaking of appreciate, what are you loving these days?
Pork belly sliders.
Really?
Girl, oh my goodness, come to Durango. We've got a food truck that has the world's best pork belly sliders. I never thought I would. No, but I could talk about food all day long, so I won't bore you that way.
I love that. I can too.
No, I am a foodie all the way. Yeah, it's a love language.
Are you a cook? Do you like to cook?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, right now I'm so busy that that's actually something that has been a sad thing that's gone to the back burner for now.
Yes.
But if you go to my blog, you'll see that, I mean, there were years there. I mean, this will be for the next time we talk, but I literally did not know how to cook when we got married. Did not know how to cook. Burned a crock pot roast. Like, I did not know how to cook. And so it's been a long...
You're saying there's hope for me?
Oh my goodness. There's so much hope. And then it's like such a joy to like do it with others, like learn it together. I love that.
That's how Aaron is, yeah.
But the other thing, the main thing I'm really learning, I'm not an outdoorsy person. I'm not a sporty person. I wish I was. I'm married to a very active person. But I'm really loving the outdoors. And
you're
really
in beautiful outdoors.
I know. And we moved to be in that context. And ultimately it is good for my soul. So I wouldn't go as far as I'm not loving exercise. I'm not quite there yet. Maybe by the next time I'm on the show. Yeah. But I'm not quite there yet. But I am loving things that are not even comfortable for me, like going jeeping or
going what?
Jeeping, like four-wheeling. Oh my goodness. Like they're always taking me up to like 15,000 feet, where there's no air to breathe. Yeah. But I love not having cell service.
Do you have cell service at your house?
Yeah. I do.
But like when you go out.
I absolutely love, so anytime I do any of those Instagram stories or whatever, it's always like later. Yeah. And I love that because it forces me to remember, like, just enjoy it, like take it in, learn and listen to the Lord in real time, and like record it in your heart first. And if it's worth sharing later,
go for it.
It'll come up.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh. Ruth, I loved you before we sat down.
Oh, well, I loved you.
And I love you more.
It's so fun to talk.
I feel like we could have 2 more hours.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you actually are so good at asking questions that that the entirety of the internet has never heard the majority of those stories. So I'm a little like, wow.
It is the best.
I'm like, wow. Love it.
Are you reading anything these days?
Well, I just finished your book, but as a family, we're reading The Tech-Wise Family.
Oh, yes. I've heard about this.
Because even for us being like real non-phone, non-computer, or non-digital people, we still feel that tug, that constancy. And so we're reading that. I'm reading You Are What You Love by James Smith.
Okay.
Who also wrote Desiring the Kingdom. So it's like a similar, it's not kind of a book that's in our circles very much, but it's really dear to my heart for a project I'm working on, for a topic that you'll hear more about next year.
Oh, dun, dun, dun.
I know, sorry.
Did you see that little nugget drop?
Wow, yeah.
Is that all you can give us?
September next year.
September 2019?
Yeah.
God, doesn't that feel like forever away?
It feels like forever away. It does.
Is it a publishing project? I should stop. Oh, yes.
It's a two-part publishing project. So
is it with you and your husband?
One of them is.
That was someone's question. They asked if you and your husband are writing a book together.
So there's a lot of stuff coming out this year. I even have 2 more things coming out July 10th, but these are all smaller projects. That one's my next big heart project.
I'm so excited. Ruth, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Your wisdom is received by me and by everyone listening. It is a joy, not just to watch your family, because I don't want to say it like that, but it is a joy to see you take your everyday moments and point us to Jesus. And you do that very well.
Thanks for encouraging me.
Very well. So thank you for encouraging us in that as well. Today's show is brought to you by SAS Footwear. Making the decision between wearing stylish shoes or comfortable shoes shouldn't feel impossible. SAS Footwear makes that decision easy with shoes and sandals to keep you on your feet all day in style. Go to sasfootwear.com. That's www.sasfootwear.com and enter the code HAPPYHOUR for free shipping on your first order at SAS, where style feels good. You guys, I told you I was not lying. Today's show was such a joy. I know it was for me, and I know it was for you as well. Ruth is a breath of fresh air for me. Our time was encouraging from one businesswoman to another, from one mama to another, from one follower of Jesus to another. Ruth is a woman that loves her family well. She desires for everyone to see Jesus in her life, in her family, and her business. And you can tell that through our conversation. If you loved our show, go ahead, text a girlfriend and tell her about it. Today's show was edited by Chris with Podshaper, and the music was developed for the show by Matt Graham. Next week, my guest is the one and only Amy Hannon. You might know her as Una Mays on Instagram, and I actually thought that was her name forever until I met her. Amy is one of my new favorite people in this world, and you're going to fall in love with her next week on the show. She actually was super kind this past spring and hosted a book tour night for If You Only Knew, the book that I released in January. She hosted a night at her house, and it was just the most lovely time ever. You guys, enjoy your week. If you've got kids in school, we are so close. The finish line is on our horizon, you guys. We can do this. Share the show with a girlfriend and have a happy hour with a friend. I will see you all back here next week with my friend, Amy Hannon.